all, thank you, Manoj. Thank you, Mohit. And thank you, AIIMS, for giving me this privilege and this honor. I know that I've actually gone and heard previous recordings of the whiteboard ceremony, and सुनने के बाद मैं थोड़ा घबरा गया. I said, my God, these are such accomplished people, such fluent, erudite people. तो मैं तो क्या हूँ, मैं तो छोटी सी चीज उनके सामने. लेकिन मैं कोशिश करूंगा. I will try my very best. So I'll tell you, I looked at the questions were submitted to me, and what I decided was to create multiple stories. These are stories of my journey, of my personal growth, and the lessons that I learned in the process. I give this to you in the spirit of sharing, not for you to agree to them or to follow. But I hope that as you listen to my journey, you will perhaps reflect on your own journey. Many of you are young, your journeys have been very long, and hopefully it'll make you reflect as you go further in your journeys. That is my goal. I have not come here to teach anything, not come here to preach anything. I've come here to share in the true sense of sharing. Okay, so story number 1, Dare to Dream. This Dare to Dream story actually begins well before my birth. And it is a story of my maternal grandfather. We used to live in Punjab in the undivided India, which is now Pakistan. My Nana ji used to live in a small town called Pipla. People ka ped tha wahan pe. Usko Pipla kehte the. On the banks of Indus River. Indus River at that time was not a nala like Jamuna in Delhi, but a real river. And somehow, and I don't know how, it came to my grandfather's head. This is late 1800s, that he wanted to be a doctor. So he goes to his farmer father and says, Bapu, I want to become a doctor. Bapu says, Uttam, his name was Uttam Chand. Are Uttam, only those who go to convent schools, they can get admission to medical colleges. There's no convent school here. But he said, Bapu, there's a convent school across the river. I want to go there. Bapu said, Are Uttam, बेवकूफ है, कौन पैसे देगा तेरी रोज कहंदे ने नैया ਨੂੰ ਉਧਰ ਲੈ ਜਾਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਪਸ ਲਿਆਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ? ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇਹਨੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ. I speak Punjabi a little bit in between. I'm sure you understand. So he said no. So my grandfather used to, this is only story told to me by my older relatives, used to go and stand on the bank of Indus River and yearningly, longingly look at, he could see the St. Thomas High School across. He was dreaming. You know, one day what he did? He jumped into the river with his clothes, swam across about a half a mile of the river. With dripping clothes, he goes to the headmaster's office. Says, sir, please accept me as a student. I want to become a doctor. The headmaster was surprised. He said, well, son, you have taken the trouble of swimming here. We will accept you. So he goes back to the father again and says, I will be accepted. The father said, same problem. Who's going to pay for your boat trip twice a day? He said, don't worry about it. Every morning for 3 years, he swam the river to go to school, took off his wet clothes, put on his uniform, and then in the evening, put on his wet clothes again, swam back. Dare to dream. Dare to dream. That's the first lesson I heard, story I heard, for daring to dream. Oh, there have been great dreamers, Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, but this is personal. This is somebody you knew. somebody who was related to you by blood. So this is how he got a scholarship. He went to Lahore, and in 1904, he graduated. And he came back to a small town, again in Punjab, called Okara, which is where I was born in December of 1944. And he had a very unusual practice. People would come to his dispensary and they would come and see him. And when they were leaving, they would say, Dr. Sahib, how much is the fee? He would say, there's a box outside. If you feel like putting something, put it in there. If you don't feel like putting something, don't put it in there. Nobody's checking, nobody's watching. Compassion. Compassion. We can never forget to be compassionate. We are doctors. We are doctors. We can never lose compassion. So this is how his practice ran there. People would come to his house in the middle of the night and say, Dr. Sahib, my wife is having a lot of pain. Can you come and see? He had a horse. He would go on horseback to the village, treat the woman, and come back. Was he poor? No, he was very rich. He was rich not only in the spiritual sense, but he also became rich in the monetary sense. Because farmers whom he had taken care of when they were poor, when they had a bumper crop 3 years later, they would come and say, Dr. Sahib, I had a great crop this year. I'm leaving 2 cows with you and 2 bags of wheat. So my grandfather almost had like 5 or 6 cows in his house, all donated by people. Partition occurred. He left, my family left, and came to Ludhiana. We were no longer affluent. The government gave us a house to live in, my family. And my grandfather, once again, in Iqbalganj, Ludhiana. Any Ludhianas, there are no Iqbalganjes, not far from CHC. You open a dispensary, same rules. Put whatever you want outside. Because he had spiritual, emotional richness, it didn't matter to him how much money he got. This I saw with my own eyes. I said, I must become a doctor. So that's the story of Dare to Dream. Okay. Where is the next story? Okay. Next story is called Discovery of Passion for Research. And this story starts from my joining. I finished my intermediate or whatever is called 2+2 or pre, whatever it is called these days. I couldn't get admission to a medical college because I was 15 years old. They said you have to wait for 2 years. So my father was transferred to Pune. And I said, I'll join Ferguson College. People from Maharashtra, everybody knows Ferguson College. Established by Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Freedom fighters. Great institution. And I decided to do honors courses in botany. Okay. And can you see me, Manoj? I see you on full screen now.
Something is happening, but anyway, please carry on. Yes, we hear you. And
okay, so hopefully you can see me. I don't know if I can see myself, but that's all right. Okay, if you can hear me and you see me, that's all that matters. Okay, so I go to Ferguson College, and I decide that I will do BSc honors in botany. As a part of our botany program, we were all required to take one field trip We used to go to Lonavala, Khandala, the hills between Mumbai and Pune, and spend a day with our demonstrators and collecting plants. We would come back to the department, and our job was to do the research required for identifying each particular plant. So, we learned how to sort of look up things and so on and so forth. I was fascinated. I took 2 trips after that on my own, not required. I'm shocked at the age of 16 years. My father allowed me to go to Goa completely on my own. No place. I don't know where I'm going to stay. I don't know where I'm going to eat. I must say, my father was bold. I would probably not let my son do that. I went there on those 2 trips, come back, and the head of the department was Professor Apte. I used to go to him, sir, I can find this, I can't find this. And he would say, rest of it, go to the library. So I started doing research. I became fascinated by plant evolution. I got fascinated by trying to understand how flat plants, thallophytes, evolved to vertical plants, ferns. Ferns are vertical. Thallophytes are flat, like lichens. And I said, this is a huge evolutionary chain. I will pursue this. So I told my parents, and I was the only person at that time who got honors with distinction in botany. I mean, everybody was surprised. No, I was surprised than most others. So I told my father, I said, I'm going to do PhD in botany. So he said, Beta, that's what you want to do, that's okay. Let's go to Delhi. Head of the Department of Botany, there's Professor Maheshwari, a phenomenal Indian botanist. Let's go talk to him. So I go there and talk to Professor Maheshwari. I say, this is what I want to do. My father says, this is what he wants to do. Maheshwari asked me a very important question. He said, Beta, do you want to study botany because you're interested in botany, or you want to do this because you're interested in research? I had to think. I said, Professor Maheshwari, because I want to do research. He said, Beta, then why don't you follow your parents' wishes? Become a doctor and do research. So that's when I discovered. Manoj, are you trying to show me something?
No, not at all.
Okay. So that's when I discovered my passion for research. After that, of course, I went to Amritsar. By the way, I went to Amritsar, got my MBBS, and I was very clear, research karna hai to, but I didn't know research in what. Anyway, going through the pathology course, there was a very influential teacher who made me interested in this pathology research in pathology. And I said, of course, there's no other better place than to AIIMS Delhi. No better person than Dr. Swami to work with. So I come to AIIMS Delhi and I request Dr. Swami to take me as a PhD, MD student. And I'm sorry to say that, but in those days, MD research was like PhD in the US. Our theses were real theses, published in a major American journal, gastroenterology, actually. So I finished this thing, but during the process, I got sort of really interested in doing research in cancer. I remember very well a journal club that I had when I was senior resident on carcinogenesis, published by Henry Pito from Wisconsin. And he was talking about those days. There was a big debate in the literature whether cancer is a disease of differentiation or it's a disease caused by mutation in the DNA, genetic or epigenetic. Pito presented a very compelling hypothesis that this is a disease of differentiation, not irreversible changes in the genome. So I got very fascinated by that. So after I finished my MD, And before I left for the US, thanks to Dr. Swami, I was accepted wherever he wrote to me, wherever he wrote about me. And then I wrote down a 3-page research project. Research project was to take nuclei from transformed cells and transplant them into nuclei of non-transformed cells. Take nuclei from non-transformed cells and put them into the cytoplasm of the transformed cells. If the cancer went along with the nucleus, it was a genetic disease. If the nucleus of a cancer cell in the cytoplasm of a normal cell behaved like a normal cell, then it was not a disease of the DNA. Well, लिख के like type वगैरह करके I'm going to Boston, where Dr. Robbins hired me as an instructor. I go to Boston and he tells me there are 2 new faculty members here. One of them is Dr. Reiser. He's an expert in chemical carcinogenesis. The other is Michael Bennett, who studies bone marrow transplantation. So I said, my God, what a great chance. I am coming here and there's an expert in chemical carcinogenesis. He had just written a review in New England Journal of Medicine. So I go to him and I say, this is what I want to do. I gave him the papers. He's a very serious guy, Swiss, very excellent researcher. So he looks at it and then he says, after a few days, look, Vinay, it's a good idea, but it can't be done. Nobody has done nuclear transfers ever successfully in mammalian cells. In fact, it took many, many years after that before nuclear transfers could be done in mammalian cells, and Dolly the sheep was born like that. So I said, okay. So I was disappointed. So I went to Dr. Robbins. He said, you're interested in cancer, talk to Michael Bennett. He studies bone marrow transplantation, and that's a way of treating cancer. So why don't you talk to him? So I go to Michael Bennett, and I start asking him, what do you do? He starts describing to me something I had never heard in my life before. Hybrid resistance. What is hybrid resistance? Hybrid resistance are the phenomena which control how bone marrow transplants are rejected in mice. And this transplantation completely is against all laws of transplantation, which had been established by studying transplantation of solid tumors, solid organs, like kidney and skin. So it was very perplexing. People had been working on it since 1960. This was 1972. Nobody could figure out what is this. In fact, the 2 papers which Bennett published in 1971 in JXMed were entitled Peculiar Immunobiology of Bone Marrow Transplants in Mice, 1 and 2. And I would talk to Bennett. And what struck me most? Because I didn't understand that much of the science, what struck me most was his childlike joy in research. He would animated, excited. I would get excited. He would describe some experiments. I would suggest some experiments. He would go right on the blackboard. And he would say, great idea, great idea. They were not great ideas, actually. I learned later on. But his love for research was infectious. I said, chemical carcinogenesis, bye-bye. I'm going to go and study with Bennett this perplexing, bizarre phenomenon. I didn't for a second stop and say, this is something which other people have been doing for years and years and not made progress. There is a high risk of failure here. What is it that assures you that you will be able to do what other people have not done? And very good people. And to me, the excitement was to do something that was considered impossible. My entire career after that, I have never, ever decided that this is impossible. And that was because of Bennett. So this is 1972. So I said, I understand these things, but my interest is really in studying leukemia, cancer. He said, okay, there is a genetic control of leukemia in mice, which also sort of behaves somewhat like that. Usko karo jaake, you do it. Well, we did some experiments. And so remember, I reached there in July of 1972. In December of 1973, we had made a very important discovery, which is that leukemia of that type that we were studying is controlled by cells that had not yet been discovered, not by T cells, not by B cells, not by macrophages. We published this paper in May of 1974, less than 2 years after I had been there. I can't describe this to my brilliance. Okay, Bennett was there; he was a great mentor. Okay. Manoj, your voice is echoing. I think you should take that paper in front of you off because it's causing echoes. So that was the beginning of the discovery of natural killer cells. I'm going to take a little detour here. When I was coming to Boston, Dr. Ramlinga Swami said, go get experience in research for 2-3 years, and then you come back. We'll have a job for you here. Okay. So 1974 came. I had spent 2 years there. I had 1 year left. I had a J1 exchange visitor visa. I didn't even know of visas at that time. I went on whatever they gave me. And I said, it's time for me to go back. I have every intention of coming back. My wife, who's my classmate in medical school and did MD at AIIMS also, she was like neurology, but she decided to do hematology oncology because in India there was a need for hematology at that time. So we had clearly planned our way to come back. So I write to Dr. Ramlinga Swami saying, sir, I'm ready to come back. He said, no, you won't come back. You stay there. You have come across a very major discovery. We have no way to support this thing. And stay there. Work hard. Do well. You love India. I know that. You'll do more good for India by being there than by coming back. I said, if this is what Ramlinga Swami is saying, who am I to second judge him? Okay. So somebody asked me, I think, one of the questions, why did I not come back, or why did I go to the US, and so on and so forth. So this is the story of that. Okay, so the next story is science is for. So the previous one was taking the road less traveled. I gave you the less traveled road. The next story is called Science is for sharing and not winning a race. The Stockholm connection. So science is for sharing and not winning the race. Okay, right now I'm just seeing the whole screen of Mr. Majumdar. I don't know why. I like your face. Okay, but this going back and forth is a little bit unsettling. Okay, anyway, so what is the story behind Science is for sharing and not winning a race. What is the Stockholm connection? So in 1974, I told you I published the paper. So in 1975, there was a big international meeting on cancer biology. And Bennett gets invited to it. मुझे कौन जानता था? I mean, I had written a couple of very nice papers, but I was, somebody working in Bennett's lab. And Bennett said, no. You have made a very exciting finding. You did it. You go. No, not me. You go. I said, I'll go. I go there, and there are big, these stalwarts, who are presenting their work. And George Klein from Karolinska Institute and Ron Haberman from NIH both announce their discovery of this natural killer cells. After they spoke, I stood up to the mic in the comment period of time. I was fearless. I went and said, sir, the things that you people have described, we discovered this last year. It's the same cell. Klein was very, very gracious. He said, we have read your papers. Okay. There are a lot of similarities, but there are dissimilarities. I said, fine. Soon after the meeting is over, Hans Wigzell, who was a professor of immunology at Karolinska, also in Stockholm, who was at that time a member of the body that decides Nobel Prizes in medicine, subsequently became the chairman of that group. He comes over to me. So I am a young assistant professor. He is a professor at Karolinska, a very accomplished person. He says, I think there are certain experiments that can be done to prove that what you describe and what we describe are the same thing. And in fact, I won't go into details. And he said, how did you do exactly your experiments with the leukemia? I told him the details of, okay, I am now seeing only myself. Can you hear me all still?
Yes, sir, you are absolutely audible, sir. Clearly.
Okay, all right. I don't know why I'm seeing myself on the screen and not other people. That's all right. Okay. As long as you can see me and you can hear me, that's what matters. So I had no hesitation. I told Wigzell in great detail exactly how I did the experiments, how they can be done again, how they can be done to test the hypothesis. So Wigzell goes back to Karolinska. I come back to Boston, and I tell everybody. I said, "This is what happened there. This is what I said." And Wigzell came and asked me, how are these experiments done? Exactly. So they said, "You're a fool. They have a big lab. You have a one-person lab. Okay, they will do this well before you can do this thing." I said, "Phir kya hua? What happened? What's the problem? Okay, what's the problem?" I said, science is not a game of one-upmanship. Science is not for victories and losses. The goal of science is to find truth and not necessarily be the first one to make the discovery. It is not a game in which there are losers and winners. Everyone wins when science advances. I have always followed this through my entire life. I have always been open, never written anything, published, unpublished work. And I have never suffered because of that in my life. My PhD students used to say to me, "Oh, how can you come and go tell these people in advance what you are doing, what you are thinking, how to do this, how to do that? They will beat us." You know what I replied? I said, the day you start fearing that other people will beat you because you shared your unpublished work with it, that's the day you are intellectually bankrupt. That's the announcement of intellectual bankruptcy. Not everybody agreed. Some people did and some people did not, but that's the way I felt. But interestingly, after that, Hans Wigzell became a very good friend of mine. Okay, he invited me to a meeting, European meeting in Denmark in 1976. And I went and gave a talk there. Then he came to Boston for a visit. And, I was very taken aback. And I said to him, we were having walking. We said, let's go for a walk after dinner. And he just, it was him and me. I said, Hans, tell me something. I am, I'm a very, very, very junior person. You are such a senior person. Whenever we meet, you sit down with me, you ask me to tell you, how much progress have you made, what progress have you made, and you always remember what I told you the last time. It could have been a year ago. I don't understand this thing. There is no reason for you to do this thing. There's no reason for you to spend time on somebody such junior than. You know what he said? He said something which, again, is one of the lessons I've learned. He said, Vinay, when you're climbing up the ladder, academic ladder or any ladder, the higher you go on the ladder, the fewer of the people ahead of you there. Look down, there are hundreds of bright young people behind you. They are the source of new ideas. Never forget, new ideas come from pristine, unbiased, open minds before they have been corrupted and twisted by dogmas. That was a very, very important lesson that I learned. And as a result of that, I rarely took PhD students. I rarely took postdoctoral fellows. I always took PhD students. And during my entire academic career, I have actually trained about 30 PhD students. It's always a joy to talk to them because they came with no bias. We all develop biases. We all develop theories. They don't come with any theories. They are open. They are pristine. And so that meeting I had with Wigzell in New York, for which I was chastised by my colleagues back in Boston, gave me dividends so rich that I can't even imagine. I can't even explain to you how much it was. Okay, so that was the science for sharing and not winning a race. The next story is no scientist is an island. So what is this story? So in 1982, I was recruited by University of Texas at Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. And I was at that time a senior associate professor. Boston said, stay here, and within 6 months, you'll be a full professor. Dallas said, you can only come as an associate professor. So, my friend said, you're going to take a rank cut, you're going to take a salary cut to move from Boston to Texas? You must be crazy. You must be crazy. Okay. So I hope you can still hear me because I'm seeing Rishabh Kumar on the screen. Hello, Rishabh. Okay. Okay. So I'll tell you why. I can say it now, many years later, why I decided to leave Boston University. I found out that in the 8 years that I had been there, I had become the expert immunologist. Everybody who I had a question in immunology wanted to come and ask me. This is wrong, completely wrong. When I am the smartest person here, that's the time for me to leave. Because I want to be around people who are much smarter than me, who are much more accomplished than me, who are the go-to people. I don't want to be the go-to person in the 7th or 8th year of my career. No, something wrong here. So I went there, took a salary cut, took a rank cut, because the environment there I knew was such great. There are very distinguished immunologists, Jonathan Orr, Ellen Vateta, like a dozen people who I looked up to. So I left. And I made a very good decision because over the next 18 years, my science thrived. My science thrived. So that is the story. No scientists in Ireland. We don't work in islands. We work in environments. So it's very important to have an environment. And that lesson I carried over when I became department chairman in Chicago many years later. I said, I must get good people. I must also have great environment. People will thrive in it. Next story is, it is better to be right than to be first. Okay. I think I'm about 10 minutes behind schedule because of the earlier. No problem. Can I continue?
You're on time. Please carry on.
Okay. So it's better to be right and than to be first. So, in the 1980s, so remember that NK cells were actually discovered in 1974 by us, in 75 by Klein, Harwin, Wigzell, etc. In the big scheme of things, 1 year doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. Okay? There's no need to be gloat over it. Okay? I published my paper 6 months before somebody else. As long as you're not playing a winning game, you are doing it for science, not to win prizes. Okay? So it is better to be right than to be first. So so what happened was, for the first 10 years or so, 12 years or so, the classical immunologists, the T cell immunologists, they actually didn't believe NK cells were real. They thought it was an artifact. Okay? So we had a great difficulty, publishing our work. We kept on publishing. We kept on getting grants. Okay, but it was a struggle. So there was a big group of people who said, "Oh, NK cells are T cells. There's nothing new about it. Just little misbehaving T cells." And until early 80s, there was no way of genetically being sure a cell is a T cell or not a T cell. In early 1980s, the T cell receptor was cloned. Certainly now there was a molecular signature of what's a T cell. If it has T cell receptor genes expressed, it's a T cell. If it doesn't have it expressed, it's not a T cell. So a race started. Again, a race started. Who is going to show first whether they're T cells or not T cells? So I was at a meeting in Hawaii on a NK cell work group, so to say. We had little support group. We used to cry at each other's shoulders, okay, because people were ignoring us. So we used to have these small conferences, workshops. At the workshop, Louis Lanier, who's a very good friend of mine, works on human NK cells, and I sort of were sitting, and we both had just read a paper coming in Nature, of all the journals, Nature, premier Nature. Okay, like 15 people, 2 top-notch world-class immunologists, describing that NK cells have T cell receptor genes. And then there was a little news article in Nature. If you see Nature in the beginning, there's news and views. The news article by the editor saying NK cells, T cells after all. We saw that. He says, "Oh my God, crap. This is wrong. This is completely wrong." Okay. And we knew exactly why it was wrong. We knew exactly what the artifacts in their experiments were. Okay. But you can't just by saying people you have an artifact, you have to show. So we came back to our labs. Louis worked on human cells. We decided, you are working on human cells, I'm working on mouse cells. Okay. You work in humans, I work in mice. Okay. The results should be very similar. And we showed that highly purified NK cells, we had to take pains to purify them to 99% purity. Because NK cells don't float in a separate compartment. They're in blood and they're spleen. So you have to isolate them, purify them, culture them. We had spent 2 years in developing the techniques to isolate them in purity, because we knew the pitfalls of contamination. We knew the pitfalls of taking cells which have been cultured for many years. And we showed that they did not have T cell receptor genes. We showed that they were complete genetically distinct. So in 1986, then, we were invited to write an editorial in Journal of Immunology. We said something like NK cells, a distinct cell type, and not something. I can't remember that. So fast forward, many years have passed. Does anyone remember that Nature paper? No. Nobody remembers that. It was wrong. Do people remember our paper? Absolutely. They remember that we were amongst the first people to show that they were not T cells. So the lesson is it's better to be right than to be first. Okay, that's the story. Then I want to sort of the title of the next story is a detour driven by curiosity. A detour driven by curiosity. So what is this? What is this detour that I'm talking about? So one of the things that something has paused. I don't know what is paused. Okay, good. Okay. So, fast forward, I have a very thriving research lab. We are considered amongst the top 5-6 groups in the world on study of NK cells. But one of the things that I think is very important, and I want my young friends to keep this in mind, whether you do research or you don't do research, always be curious. Never, never, never let curiosity die. People tend to sort of, as they go mature and they grow up, they advance in careers and so on and so forth, they think they know a lot. They begin to lose curiosity. When you lose curiosity, you lose innovation at the same time. So this is a little detour. It's a curiosity-led detour. So all these years, and I'm talking about from 1972 to 1999, I've been working on mouse cells, mouse natural killer cells. We cloned the receptors, we characterized the receptors, and we did all sorts of things. We made transgenic mice, we made knockout mice, and studied the functions in great details. We had discovered a new receptor in NK cells. It's called 2B4. It doesn't matter what it is called. And we were studying signaling through this molecule. And we came across a paper from a very, 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 very excellent group in Boston who were studying human diseases, human immunodeficiency diseases. And they published a paper showing that one of the human diseases called XLP, those of you who are faculty or senior might know, is X-linked lymphoproliferative disease. It's an Epstein-Barr virus causing a fatal disease. And Terhorst and his group showed that this disease is because of mutation in one of the signaling molecules. When we read the paper, he said, this signaling molecule is the same molecule that our receptor also uses. So maybe there's a connection between human disease and the work that we are doing. So suddenly we became interested in human disease. Okay, I had never done clinical work in my life. Okay, I was trained extremely well in AIIMS Delhi to do clinical work. I chose not to. Okay. I chose to go in education and research. But here was something that again we have to think. Do we want to go towards human diseases? We have really no expertise in working in humans. We don't see patients. But curiosity. So we have no patients, we have no clinical material, and we are chasing a human immune deficiency disease. We found out that people, there was a group in Paris who are experts in this. So I called Dr. Genevieve de Saint-Basile in Paris, and I said, Genevieve, you people have been studying the disease for a very long time, and you have published papers, but you don't know what's caused it. I think we can tell you what the cause of this is. So she said, okay, how? I said, look, it's a hypothesis, so we won't want to bias you. You just send us some DNA sample, and we will, tell you within a few weeks. Well, samples came, we sequenced it, and we discovered this human disease is caused by mutations in one of the genes called perforin genes, a gene which is required for cytotoxic function of cells. So it was a very interesting detour. We started the work in May of 1999. And in December of 1999, we had a paper in Science. It is my most cited paper, more than 1,500 times. Although I don't think it's my most important paper. My most important papers were others. Okay. But since this was a human disease, so it also opened up a new field of investigation in which we did not go. We let other people go there. Okay. We made some predictions based on our work that this will turn out to be true for other diseases like this. They all turned out to be true, okay, which was satisfying for us. Okay, the next story is an unexpected call from Dr. Robbins. I'm sure many of you want to hear this thing. What happened, how it happened. So it's 1979. I've been in Boston for 7 years now. I've published very well. I have my NIH grant in 1976. And one day Dr. Robbins called me to his office and he says, Vinay, something I want to talk to you about. I said, what, sir? He says, I'm going to retire in a couple of years. I'd like you to join me as a co-author of Robbins. Can you imagine? My jaw dropped. I started stammering. I said, how? I mean, this is not possible. I'm just a very junior faculty member. I've done mostly research. Of course, I was interested in teaching. So he saw me hesitating. He says, I understand your hesitation. Your research is going very well. And you must be concerned that if you start working on the books, which I could see how much time it takes, your research will dilute or become weak. So don't rush to give me an answer. So think about it for a few days and tell me. So after meeting him, I go to my mentor, Michael Bennett. At that time, still a mentor, later on friend and colleague. He said, Kya hua? I said, okay, this is what happened. He said, then what did you tell Dr. Robbins? I told him, I'm not so sure how to think about it. He said, look, you're being foolish. You can do it. It's not impossible. Once again, it's not impossible. I thought about it. I said, I thought it's a risky proposition. Is the road less traveled? It is risky. My research may be harmed by the amount of effort I have to put in. But encouraged by Bennett, went back and told him, yes, I will do it. Okay. So that was an unexpected call from Dr. Robbins. And then, as you know, that over the years, I have become co-author and senior editor of Robbins' Basic Pathology, Robbins and Cotran's Pathological Basis of Disease, Robbins' Review of Pathology, and a new book coming out called Robbins' Essential Pathology. And then, the three of us, Dr. Cotran, Dr. Robbins, and I, we worked together as co-authors for almost 25 years. It's very uncommon in science and in medicine for partnerships to last that long. Because at some point or the other, rivalries occur. Everybody begins to think, is this person getting more credit than I'm getting credit? I'm senior, he's junior, etc., etc., etc. So the reason why we work so very well together, I call it a partnership made in heaven. What is the reason for it? The reason was that Robbins and Cotran, who were far senior to me, They never let their egos come in the way of being criticized. I had an equal right to criticize their writing as much as they had the right to criticize my writing. I could say this is terrible, needs to be rewritten, or I will rewrite it. They could do the same thing. There was no ahankar. You know, in ahankar in Sanskrit, there was no ahankar. There was no sense that I am big dog, you are the small dog. Stay at your place. I say sit, you sit. I say stand, you stand. No. This was very important because as I was getting senior, I began to realize how important it was to treat everybody as equal, not according to rank, okay, but according to accomplishments. And so I'll tell you two little snippets of Robbins and Dr. Kumar. So when I first started writing in 1979, it was basic pathology. So Robbins said, here there are 22 chapters in the book. You write 11, I'll write 11. But since you are new, you can pick the 11 chapters that you want. I'll write the remaining ones. I said, okay. So I decided I will write all the general pathology chapters because I was sort of a more basic scientist type person. And but there was only first 6 or 7. I still had to pick, 5 more. So I'm looking now, okay, which systemic pathology chapters I should write. So I sort of started counting the pages. I said, chapter on male genital system is the shortest. So I'll take this. Okay, it's a short chapter. We'll count as one chapter, it's a short chapter. And then I'll take this, and I'll take this, etc., etc. Mr. Robbins said, take it. You take this, you take this. So I said, when I started writing, I said, let me do this short chapter first, because if it's done, I'll say, okay, one chapter done. Okay, progress. So I revised the chapter extensively. I didn't like it the way it was written. I revised extensively. I read extensively. I revised it extensively. I took it to Robbins. Okay, he read it and he made marks, a lot of marks. Content this, suggest this is improve, do this, etc. Again about this. So I said, okay, this is understandable. I'm writing for the first time. I published many papers by that time, and I was known to be a good writer. So I revised. I took it back to him. Second round, again, ये ठीक नहीं है, change this, etc., etc. चलो ठीक है, दूसरी बार हो गया, ठीक है. Second round. Now I'm thinking, he has read it twice, he has made comments twice. Now the third draft should be more or less final. So I gave it to him, and I get back with the same number of changes, etc., 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 and a note underneath it. There's no good writing, only good rewriting. That was Robbins' way of saying, aim for perfection, and perfection is very difficult. You have to keep on working at it. You have to keep on working at it. Okay, going from 90% to 95% is easy. 95 to 96 is more difficult. 96 to 97 is more difficult. But when you reach 98, going to 99 is exceedingly hard. Going from 99 to 99.5 is exceedingly hard. Don't give up. Keep on doing it. A very important lesson. Ramsey Cotran. So he wrote the kidney chapter, but we used to read each other's chapters and suggest diagrams. One of the things I never understood as a student, as well as a resident also, the three-dimensional structure of the glomerulus. So, I was sort of reading, etc., etc. I came across some ideas from somewhere where there was a three-dimensional cut of the glomerulus. So I sent it to the graphic artist. It was not my chapter. And I got the picture is still in the book. You can see it. 20 or 30 years later, it is still there. And I got a three-dimensional cut of the glomerulus, and I sent it to Dr. Cotran. He said, Vinay, this is a terrible picture. I said, Dr. Cotran, what's the terrible about it? He said, well, it doesn't look like an electron micrograph. I said, that's exactly right. It doesn't look like electron micrograph. Electron micrograph is two-dimensional. This is three-dimensional. The students will understand this better. Once again, since by this time I was the senior author of the book, he said, it's your book, you decide. I will take it. Okay. Once again, Ramsey Cotran was a world-renowned renal pathologist. He was very senior to me. He would have easily said no. He didn't. Okay. He said, well, he has strong feelings about it. He has justified this thing in his mind. Let us do it. 6 months later, he calls me. When I think we will use that figure also in the next edition of the book. I said, how come? He says, well, the residents and students have come and told me it is so easy. You made it so easy. Okay. So there was no ego, and there's no shame involved in saying that I was wrong and you were right. Okay. That is why we work together so well. That's what human relationships are about. Respect each other, trust each other. Don't think that you're smarter than everybody else. Okay. When you go in leadership position, this becomes extremely important. So in addition to writing books with them, there are a lot of other things I learned from them, like this, for example. Okay. All right. Now, some of you have asked me questions about medical education and U.S. medical education and Indian medical education, and it's a long, complicated topic by itself. But my next story's heading is an experiment in medical education. So in 1995, when I was in Dallas, I was in charge of teaching the pathology. I was the course director, which means I decided, lecturers, labs, how many, who will teach, etc., etc. I was a full professor by that time. I was well established as an author of major textbooks. So I had a certain degree of, certain degree of recognition of my teaching interests. And, I would see students coming to the lectures looking bored, sometimes not coming. In the US, there's no compulsory attendance. You can come if you want to, you don't come, don't come. Okay. It's up to you. And, as I began to think about it, and I asked the students, I said, look, tell me honestly, what is it that you think is wrong with how we are teaching? You don't seem excited. Okay. You are smart people. You all do very well in USMLE, etc. That's not the problem. The problem is this: I don't see excitement. I don't see in you a sense of curiosity. I don't see any struggle. They said, Dr. Kumar, you're absolutely right. So the problem is this, he said. You gave us lectures. We take lecture notes. We go home. We read the book. We find out 85% of what you give in the lectures is available in the book very easily. We are educated people. We can read. Tell us, read that. But then help us how to apply this thing, how to interpret these things. Tell us the complexities. Don't tell us there are 4 kinds of lung cancer. We can also read there are 4 kinds of lung cancer. Tell us about targeted therapy against lung cancer. Tell us how sometimes squamous and adenocarcinomas are mixed about the original lung cancer. That's what we want to know. We don't want to know from you how many types of lung cancer there are, or that emphysema and obstructive and restrictive lung diseases are different. We've done physiology, we understand that. So I called my colleagues. We were almost like a very large faculty. And I said, we are going to change. We're going to change from a knowledge-based teaching of pathology to competency-based teaching of pathology. This is 1995, when the word competency-based was unheard of. And the flipped classrooms were unheard of. And we actually didn't have any model to follow. But this is what we decided. When I say we decided, it's very important. I'm going to tell you something, okay? I called all the faculty, teaching faculty. I said, look, we have to make a change. Our students are not excited. They do well on exams, but they're not curious. They memorize things and repeat them the way we ask them questions. We say, list 10 cytokines found in rheumatoid joint. Okay. They can list them. They actually don't know what to do. They don't know why those cytokines produce apanus. And what does apanus do to the cartilage? And what happens to cartilage? And why is the joint destroyed? That's what we should be trying to teach them, not how many cytokines and names of cytokines. There's a lot of debate. Many people said, you know what the most common thing was? We were educated like this. What's wrong with us? Okay. And no, there's nothing wrong with you. But you had to do a lot of learning after you finished your medical school. You are now a professor 20 years later. Okay. You don't even remember what you were like when you were students. A lot of argument. I allowed the arguments to continue for almost 3 months. I said, let everybody argue. Let everybody fight. Let's reach a consensus. Because I knew that if we change things without this discussion, without this sanghash, Sanskrit word sanghash, this struggle, there will not be stakeholders in it. They will say, Dr. Vinay Kumar, you did this thing. Okay? You bear the consequences of this. Or they would say, see, I told you, don't do it. But once everybody struggled, sangharsh, for 3 months, everybody had been heard. Everyone we came to an agreement. Everybody had a stake in it. And that was very important for me to learn before become a chairman. Okay. So what we did was we reduced lectures by 60%. We created 100 cases, clinical cases, okay, with interactive, electronically, even at that time we had IT, electronically interactive cases. And we had 4 hours of discussions of cases per week, in which small groups of students, they had a case. They had case on things they had not been lectured on. They were told, read this from here and there. We would give them a case and say, read pages so and so, so and so, so and so. A lot of it was not covered in the lecture. Okay. So the endocrine lecture was, endocrine pathology is hypofunction, hyperfunction, and nodules. Not these are the 4 kinds of thyroiditis. So you can read those yourself. But the cases had those things in it. So the students actually had to go and read. They had to read the case, they had to go read the book, they were to read the case, they go read the book again, back and forth, back and forth. A lot of effort involved on their part. And what the faculty said, they said, Dr. Kumar, they will come completely unprepared, they will bomb, they will be confused, they'll be upset. What happened instead was the students were energized, enthused. They came back with absolutely first-class discussions. I didn't even have to speak. They all spoke to each other. Okay? And one person knew some things, other person didn't know anything. He said, correct this. And if somebody would say to me, this is the pathogenesis, this is why the valve has become deformed after in rheumatic fever. Give me 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I would do? I would say, okay, thank you, John. Rebecca, do you agree or disagree? Now, she had to say something, agree or disagree. If she said agreed, I would say why. If she said disagreed, I would say why. So it doesn't matter who answered the question. Everybody had to participate in it. Okay. There's a group dynamics in there. And we got student feedback, and the course was wildly popular. Students said, we work 10 times harder than we used to before. But we enjoy it because we actually feel we are not just learning information, we also are learning how to apply it to a clinical problem, which is what the cases are. Okay? So we're not trying to make them pathologists. We're trying to make them clinicians, because most people would not go into pathology. The students realized that. They completely realized that. And after 2 years, they went to the dean and they said, why can't other departments use the same method? The dean calls me to his office. Said, Vinay, well, there's a prize for your success. I said, what? He said, from tomorrow, you're Associate Dean of Medical Education. I said, what, me? He said, because you've done such a good job. Now you do it for other departments also. Anyway, I was there and I did that. So so what we actually were doing was we were going from knowledge-based teaching in which you just memorize the facts to competency-based in which you learn. Of course, you have to know it, but you also have to know how to apply it, how to solve problems. What you know is irrelevant if you can't solve a problem. You are trained not to memorize facts. You are trained to take care of patients. I mean, the patients don't tell you that for this symptom, go read this book or so on. So I think that, oh my God, I'm getting late. Okay. Okay.
No, Vinay, you are still on time.
I'm still on time. Okay. I'm almost done. Okay. So I'm going to tell you one little story. And that story is called Letting Other People Follow Their Dreams. Many of you will become leaders, senior people, faculty members, and so on and so forth. Or even if you're not faculty, even if you're in private practice. Whatever I'm telling you doesn't apply only because I'm a researcher, I'm an academic, I'm a textbook author. I hope I'm telling you, I'm giving you, I'm using my stories to give you other lessons which are applicable broadly any human endeavor. Letting others follow their dreams. Okay. So I'm now department chairman at the University of Chicago. It's a very, very respected department, known for. Chicago is the number 2 university in the world in Nobel Prizes. Number 1 is Cambridge. Okay, it's very esteemed, very prestigious. I was honored that they actually made me the chairman with that, despite the fact that I had never practiced medicine. And I had never run any department. But this is where actually what I did for the course by talking to people and getting them involved and having mistakes, that turned to be very useful to me. Anyway, so now I'm in the position where I have to train other people, help other people build their careers. Okay, so I'll tell you 2 little stories in this respect. Story number 1. We have residency applicants. So I used to interview every residency applicant. The first person they met when they came to the department for their interviews was me. And I would talk to them philosophic things, like the ones that I'm talking to you about. Have passion for excellence. Figure out what your passion is. Follow it. Don't be afraid. Take risks. Go forward. We are here to support you. You won't fall. Don't worry about it. Take risks. You can take risks at this time, okay, without worrying about it, because you're in a supportive environment. We won't let you wither. We'll help you. So anyway, so I'm interviewing this student. His name is something Patel. So obviously I knew he was from Indian parents. Okay, so I look at his application, and a little unusual. Unusual in the sense that, so he finishes high school, then he goes to college. In America, there are 3 or 4 colleges which are run by the armed forces, like your AFMG type. Okay, except there's one for naval, one for air. The army one is called West Point. Okay, and these are top-notch colleges. Okay, the condition is this: if you are accepted, your tuition, your free education, and you have to serve just like at FMC. You have to serve. If you 4-year college, you have to serve 8 years or 4 years again in service before you can be allowed to leave. Otherwise, you do repay the loan. You repay the fee tuition. So I see this person went to West Point. I said, yeah, very interesting. Desi bacche jo hai, they don't go to this military type of things. Their parents don't send them to this military type of things. Okay? They say, doctor बनना, engineer बनना, ये करना है. ये तो दूसरों का काम है. हम लोग लड़ाई वाला नहीं करते. So I said, first of all, this person must have had to fight his parents, who were immigrants from India. And then he finishes that in his CV, and he joins the U.S. Marines. There are 4 corps in the U.S. Okay, Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marines. Marines do everything. They have ships and they have aircraft, and they are really tough sort of fighters. So he's in the Marines now. He's in the Marines now, and he's been in the Marines for 4 years. He finishes the Marines, pays his, does service, and then joins medical college. He's been out of college for so many years. He joins medical college. He does well in medical college. And I see him. I said, Are Patel bhai, how come you did this thing? He said, You're absolutely right. My parents said absolutely no. I said, absolutely yes. They said, You're on your own. I said, I'm on my own. Don't ask for help or advice later on. I said, I won't ask you for advice. I said, this person followed his dream. Then he went to the Marines, the most difficult branch of the Indian American Defense Forces. I said, tell me about your Marines experience. He says, well, when 9/11 occurred, I was on a aircraft carrier positioned in the Arabian Sea. And I said, what was your mission? He said, we were not told at that time what our mission is. But we subsequently found out, I'm saying it publicly now because it was well known and that's not a secret, is our mission was that if there is trouble inside Pakistan, our job was to go land by parachutes and deactivate their nuclear devices. So there's no world war because of a nuclear explosion, because it falls in the hands of terrorists and so on and so forth. So I said, this person has seen life. And then he comes to medical college. Then he applies for residency. His grades were average. So after he goes away, and we had a group meeting to decide, I said, look, we are going to take this person. He said, why? I said, because he has shown toughness, sense of purpose, follow the passion, okay? And he has reached this far. This tells me that he has a very, very powerful character. He will succeed. Nothing is going to stop him. Someone who has done all of these things will not be stoppable. That's sub story number one. He actually didn't come to us. He went to a place which is closer to his home, and I stayed in touch with him for a while. He's doing quite well. Story number two. So we have a University of Chicago graduate, went to college in University of Chicago, went to medical school in University of Chicago, our own school, and he applies for residency. And he's done research for about 3 years in a very good immunology lab before he comes to college, before he comes to medical school. And he joins a residency program. Our residents, on an average, during their 4-year residency, they usually have 2 or 3 very good publications, case reports or part of a bigger group or so on. He has none. Okay. So when he finishes residency, he says, I'd like to get a job in that department. So there's a big discussion in faculty. Shall we take him or not take him? He's clinically very good, but he has shown no interest in doing anything investigational. That we are really an academic, very research-driven institution. So I talked to some senior colleagues. They said, he's excellent diagnostically. He's gifted diagnostically. I think we should give him a chance. I said, okay, we'll give him a chance. Okay. All right. So we gave him a chance, and he joins as junior faculty. And 2-3 years later, he comes to my office, and he says, I have to discuss something with you. I said, Bolo. He said, I know that this is a very research-intensive department. This is a very research-intensive university. I want to tell you that I'm not going to do research. I want to know if there is room for me here, or should I leave? I said, you don't do research. Tell me, what do you want to do? He says, I want to become the world's best pathology teacher. So now he's talking to me. He knows, I'm a world-renowned pathology teacher. And he says to me, Dr. Kumar, I promise you, I will become the world's best pathology teacher. I saw passion in his eyes. I said, we will keep you. Do you know his name? His name is household word now. Hussain Sattar. Those of you who have finished second professional have seen the book he has written called Pathoma, Pathoma, which is a small book and video lectures. It's wild. There's not a single student in the US, in Harvard, Stanford, Chicago, you name it. Everybody has read that book. That audio lectures and the book. It's exceedingly well written. It's because he had research background, so it's got very academically made, clinical pathological correlation type of thing. In fact, I think he probably is more famous in the world than me today. I think more people read Pathoma than read Robbins. So, letting others follow their dream. I saw passion in his eyes. I saw a dream in his eyes. And I said, he will do it. At least he deserves a chance to do it. He's now a first-class breast pathologist and world-renowned. And a sort of, world-renowned educator. I mean, I asked him, I said, Hussain, how do you keep sure that your book is not hacked? He says, I don't care. Let them hack. More people hack, more people will read it. I don't care. I didn't do this to make money. I did it because this is my passion. Okay, we are coming to the end. Okay, and the last story is not a story. It's sort of a distillation of many different things. Last item I want to discuss with you is the circle of goodness. The circle of goodness. What do I mean? There are two kinds of people in the world. Those who believe everybody is good unless proven otherwise. And those who believe everybody is bad unless proven otherwise. Right? So, I am in the former group. I believe everybody is good unless they prove that they're not good. Because I think that, and in fact, I think that is actually true. But we have become so jaundiced and so jaded by the bad things we see around us that we have changed from the perspective of everybody is good unless proven otherwise. And when I talk to people, they say, well, everyone, every now and then somebody could screw you. I said, am I going to treat 90% of people who are intrinsically good because I'm afraid that 10% will not be good? Look what injustice I would do to those people because of my fear that 10% will not be good. And the other, of course, thing is this: you are bad unless you prove otherwise. You start with a very negative reaction. If you think people are good, they'll work very hard to be good. They will say, people have trusted me. People have trusted my goodness. And I must remain good. I must remain good. And if those people, those 90% in whose goodness you put faith, if they do the same thing to the 90% that they will meet, 90% of the people they will meet. Just imagine the circle of goodness becomes wider and wider and wider. And as a society, we are better. I didn't tell you something in the beginning. I'll tell you in the very end. I didn't tell you much about my father. You heard about my father, about deciding whether to do botany or this and that. He never gave me any advice. He gave me advice only once. When I was leaving for the US, he said, "Look, son, I've never told you what to do, what not to do. There's one thing I want to tell you. So you're leaving the home, you're leaving the country. If you are ever faced with a choice between being good and being great, I hope you don't have to make that choice. But if you have to make that choice, I hope you will be good rather than great." And I've never forgotten that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay.
Thank you, sir. That was a wonderful talk, sir. Very inspiring to hear you, sir.
Archisman.
Yes, sir.
In
Sir, can you
case-
hear me, sir?
I can
Yes,
hear you.
I can hear you.
I can
In
hear you.
case there are a couple of questions which go over and above what all Dr. Vinay Kumar has talked about,
Yes, sir.
please mention them to him, and
Yes, sir.
yeah, he will handle them.
Yes, sir. Sir, we have a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like you already had an undergraduate degree when you entered MBBS. Like,
Mhm.
how do you think that it helped you compared to if you didn't have that undergraduate degree? Like, did it help you in any way? Because in the West, this system is very prevalent. Like, this is the system where they
Yes.
already have an undergraduate degree.
Yes. So in my case, it'll help in a way different from the way it actually. I'll answer. There's two-part answer. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, it helped me because when I reached medical school, I had taken chemistry in college. I had done organic chemistry. I had done geology. I had done zoology. I had done botany. I knew a lot about physiology and biochemistry. And so when others were struggling with physiology and biochemistry, I was having no problem whatsoever. Okay. So it helped me in that way. But that's not the reason for why in the US there's a 4-year college system. I strongly believe in the 4-year college system. And I'll tell you why. Okay. My own children have gone to college. They are both lawyers. They didn't go become doctors. Okay. But I have seen, here is the point. The 4-year college education. So let me tell you something which will shock most of you. When people apply to us in medical school, we are not particularly looking for people who have done biology or what I did, biology or chemistry or biology. We take people who are music majors. We take people who are anthropology majors. We take people who are philosophy majors. Okay. What a college education done in the US is analytic thinking. That is why fresh graduates, BScs from good American universities, they finish and they're a major in chemistry and economics, and they get a job in Goldman Sachs for $100,000 a year. So I asked them, how do Goldman Sachs is a brokerage house, they're financial business, okay? They said, no, Dr. Kumar, they're looking for people who have analytic skills. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there's more to life than medicine and biology and so on and so forth. Never again in your life, never again in the life will people get this much time to explore the arts, the fine arts. Okay, one of the big deficiencies in me is this: I never learned fine arts. Okay, I would love to play a piano. I don't know how to do it. Okay, I love to play an instrument. Okay, I love to paint. I can't do it. Okay, Yes, I can do it. Okay, I mean, if I really want and I can try, I can do this thing. But the 4-year college education in the US mm, expand your horizons. Okay, I think you become a more whole person. Okay, and I
Yes.
think that's the reason why the 4-year college education is I think it's really good. So our students who come are usually older. They have thought a lot about life. Okay, they're more mature. Okay, and so I think that's the difference.
So, like, why, like, what are the limitations of applying this system in India? Like,
I think I think the limitations are in the head. Okay, I'm sorry to say this thing, but we were ruled by the British. For how many years? The system we have is the same system that UK has, or UK used to have. Okay, they have also changed, but UK still has a system where you do 12 years and then you go to professional colleges. And I think the barrier is we have not given up being slaves. I'm sorry to say that. We still are slavish. All our rules and regulations and babus and layers of, you know, under clerk, peon, uske upar wo hai, uske upar wo hai. The system is very hierarchical. And so, and everybody who's in the hierarchy is very comfortable in the hierarchy. Okay, the more higher you go, the less you want to change because now you have reached that place. So I think that, by the way, it is changing now. There are 4-year colleges which are coming up. The one of the best, which is going to be, which will be one of the best, which is being built now, is Ambani's are building one in Navi Mumbai, and they are getting advice from Chicago, from Stanford, from Hopkins. Okay, and they are going to make whatever they do first class. Dhirubhai Ambani High School is excellent, as you know, but there are others. I think there are there are others who are already there. Okay, I think the system will change. Frankly, if you ask my opinion, I think there should be only one system, 4-year college. Okay, but even if it is one half like this, one half like that, people can decide. The people can decide. I want to take the shortcut and graduate faster, finish my degree faster, or I want to take the advantages of liberal arts education. I'll tell you something else. Other difference which is important is this: that in India, when people apply to medical school or engineering school, they don't know much about what medical school is, what engineering school is. Okay, they've heard from other people, एक डॉक्टर उनका अंकल है या कुछ है या किसी ने कहा कि अच्छा है ये कर लो कर लो. There is no time to explore when you are in high school. As you know, even in high school, you have a humanities track and you have a commerce track. You start specializing very early, and I think that cramps that cramps the growth of your mind. I'm not saying that people in India are not smart or they're handicapped. People overcome in one way or another. Okay, but that doesn't mean that's the best way to do it.
sir, and another thing, you talked about being a more whole person. We have heard about, sir, your extracurricular activities, like your experience with the theater of the oppressed. Would you want to share any of your experiences, sir, and the lessons
Yeah,
you learned along the way?
yeah. I'll be very honest with you. Okay, uh, I during my career, okay, I saw unethical behavior. I saw scientists cheating. I saw scientists fabricating data. In my own case, there was someone who rejected my paper and then started doing the experiments in his own lab. Very clear to me. I was so unhappy. I reported, and that person got blacklisted, and he's left research. Okay, but that's because I had the ability to push. to push him out, okay, or get him pushed out by the system. Okay. My grandfather, who was a honest, compassionate person, okay, and and so there's a part of me which is always sort of, which I have not described, that also thinks about these things. Okay. And but it was all very informal. It was very personal. Okay. When I came to Chicago, the University of Chicago has two absolutely outstanding sections called McLean Center for Medical Ethics, which is the premier medical ethics program in the country, and Bucksbaum Institute of Doctor-Patient Relationship. And again, just like Robbins called me one day and said, "This is what you're going to do." 5-6 years ago, the head of these programs said, "Dr. Kumar, you're going to be a senior scholar of the Bucksbaum Institute of Medical." मैं तो clinician नहीं हूँ, okay? No. Pathologists take care of patients also, okay? And so I really got involved in that. I got very involved in that. I got so involved in that I actually applied for a grant jointly with Dr. Satendra Singh. Many of you know who he is. He's at UCMS. Okay? He's a very preeminent sort of champion of disability rights. Okay, and he approached me, and I had heard him before. One second. And then okay, 1 second. I will do it. You, give me a second, okay? I just have to do something.
Well, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
While Vinay is not there, whatever introduction I had planned to give for Vinay Kumar, most of us are anyway aware of who and what Vinay Kumar is. So it was just as well that I missed out on that. I'd just like to add a couple of things. I am Manoj Singh. I am a pathologist at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in the department where Vinay did his MD. And Archisman
Yes.
Majumdar is a second year medical student here at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And the other person coordinating this are Mohit Joshi, who is an assistant professor of surgery. And a couple of things I'd like to add about, my acquaintance with Vinay Kumar. I joined the institute in 73 as a medical student. He had already left in 72. And I never really knew him at that time. I met him much later. Courtesy our friends Dr. Karmarkar and Dr. MP Sharma, I became friends with Vinay's father, Mr. Bihari Lal. And for many years, because he was here in South Delhi, and I became friends with him. So in fact, started off, of course, that my son is there, and these guys said, Vinay, Vinay. Actually, I didn't know Vinay. I met Vinay much later. When, of course, Uncle had already gone to the US. When I went there, Uncle was there. But I was actually friends with Vinay's father. And the time that I was there, I would just like to potentiate one thing which Vinay said. I mean, apart from everything else, about Mike Bennett. A tremendous gentleman. The 6 months that I spent in Dallas, in the university, doing research, besides Vinay and, of course, others, Mike was a huge resource, a personnel resource, a tremendous gentleman. And actually, he and I never got to discuss research very much because, I didn't know too much about research. I was just doing a couple of projects which he used to kind of advise me on. But such a nice gentleman. And, like what Vinay says is something which I would second, that, Mike has been a loss to humanity. Vinay, over to you.
Yeah, I think I didn't say enough about Mike, but I think that you know, if I have one hero, Mike is my hero. Unselfish, selfless, okay, lifting other people on his shoulders, never trying to sort of outsmart people. Okay, and he was just a tremendous human being, tremendous human being. In fact, in his honor and his memory, I have given a donation to University of Texas. There is a lecture, annual lecture called Michael Bennett Lecture in Pathology, where people from all over the world, who knew of him and his work and so on, every year they come and there's an invited lecture. It's a very prestigious invited lecture. Okay, and I'm very happy I could do that. And Mike passed away a few years ago. So I was telling you about these ethics and so on and so forth. So I actually got more involved in these things, and I now go regularly to the meetings of the Bucksbaum Center, and Satyendra came here after that, did a fellowship at McLean Center for Medical Ethics, and I was very happy and that I was able to make that connection. And it was very fulfilling, very satisfying when I came to Delhi and participated in the Theatre of the Oppressed, which many of you have seen. Okay, as a scientist, I didn't think this was a waste of time. I thought this was something very, very important that we completely miss. I'm very happy that the new curriculum for the MBBS now has these things in it. It's called soft skills. Okay, and some of us sort of get it somewhat naturally. Others actually have to. Until, frankly, when I heard about Theatre of Oppressed, I said, "What is this? This sounds sort of silly." I'll be honest with you. That's what I thought. Okay, until I participated in that. Okay, so I think my willingness to participate, I think, was an expression of a desire inside, which had never been found expression in any other form.
That's Manoj sir, would you want to say and add anything, sir?
I would just like to say thank you to Dr. Vinay Kumar and to the entire students faculty of AIIMS, headed by R. Kisman, of course. And I think this has been a great experience. And of course, anybody who wants to get in touch with Dr. Vinay Kumar is always welcome to do that on his email, Facebook, telephone, whatever it is. One question which I think might be there in several minds, which has been in my mind. I have not solved it as yet, but the question is, how does one become Vinay Kumar? And the answer is very, very simple. The answer is work, work, hard work, organized hard work, directed hard work. Nothing else. You don't need to be an intellectual genius. I don't think Vinay Kumar prides himself on being an intellectual genius or something. But the fact is that ever since I have known him, this is a man who has worked from waking up in the morning till, you ring him up at 9:30 at night, he says, okay, I'll call you back in an hour. I'm busy. So the issue is to organize yourself and then work very, very hard to whatever you are sort of uh, aiming at. Thank you all very much.
I may add something, Manoj. Very important, which I've said before. Find your passion.
True.
Find your passion. Okay. Hard work, hard work, hard work. But you will work hard only if you are passionate about what you're doing.
True.
Find your passion. Okay. When I recruit residents, when I recruit faculty, I tell them, you're all smart. I'm looking for only one thing: passion for excellence. You tell me what's your passion, and I will tell you how to reach there. So you want to know how to become Vinay Kumar? You tell me what's your passion for excellence, and I will make you not Vinay Kumar, but much better than Vinay Kumar. Don't think. One thing that I had, which I didn't mention to you, was don't use anybody else as your benchmark. Okay, itna hona hai. Because you know what, you know why you should not? Because then you'll be only as good as that person. Okay, so you should not be, I should not be your benchmark. Okay, that's my
Thank you. Thank you for your insight, sir. I would now request Dr. Manoj to please say something before we end this session.
I've already said it, Arkisman.
Okay,
Thank everybody. Dr. Vinay Kumar, Arkisman.
Where is Mohit? I don't see Mohit.
Mohit is around somewhere.
Okay, right. Okay.
And all the people who are attending. And there is Mohit.
Yep,
and we hope to be back in touch whenever the next edition of this the whiteboard comes up.
Oh, I Saptarshi Mandal. My God, I see Saptarshi. Saptarshi was trained at the University of Chicago. Did his residency there. He's in Bhopal right now, I think. Right? Okay, I can't hear him. Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's right. Okay. So I think I frankly tell you, I enjoyed very much. Okay. I did spend time thinking about it, obviously. Okay. But I enjoyed the process. And I honestly, I said in the beginning, I've heard some other people give lectures. This is phenomenal. This is just a fantastic program that you have. Keep doing it. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You will keep on getting, you have the AIIMS name, so you'll be able to draw people, all different spheres and walks and so on and so forth. Okay. That's wonderful. I think it's a great thing that you're doing. Thank you very much for calling.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Okay, bye. Good night.
Good afternoon to everybody else.
Thank you, sir.
I have a Zoom call in the morning. Okay.
Okay. Cancel.
How do I leave? Okay.
Somebody will just cancel all of us.
Okay. Okay.
So, thank you, Professor Manoj Kumar Singh and Mohit and Archisman. It was a wonderful session. I think this is, from my perspective, this was the best storytelling session that we have had so far, and it was great to have him on the talk, and also the way you people kind of helped him build his stories was quite wonderful. I would particularly want to thank Professor Manoj Kumar Singh, because he suggested the format that it should come out as stories rather than as questions and answers. And that worked really great for this particular talk. And Mohit for following it up right from the inception till the execution and through all the technical difficulties that we had in the beginning today. And Archisman was very good as a student moderator. It was great. And thanks everyone for joining in. Mohit, do you want to have a last word?
Want to introduce this man who was speaking just now, who is the actual man behind the entire program?
He is a showmaker. No? He is Professor Pratap Sharan from the Department of Psychiatry. And he will be the silent man behind all the wonderful work. And I really like the whole presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pratap. Thank you for giving us all this opportunity. And we hope to be with you in future programs also. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And so bye for today, and we'll meet again in a week's time.
I hope so.
Thank you, everyone.